Egunon, sail ofizialeko Vivir es fácil con los ojos cerrados filma ikusi berri dugu. Orain egingo dugu prentsaurrekoa.
Good morning. Let's start the press conference corresponding to the film Vivir es fácil con los ojos cerrados, Living is easy with your eyes closed. We've got the director and scriptwriter David Trueba, Javier Cámara, Natalia de Molina, Francisco Lomer, and Jorge Sanz. The actors are waiting your questions. First question, please. Here in the first row, please, quick. Can you give that person a microphone? And I'll take turns. Everyone raise their hands for the question. Congratulations for the film. I'm not too sure to tell you whether I thought it an extraordinary film. What it did seem to me is a film which is a very homely film, really. And David, I wanted to say that I am the person who sat down next to that kid who gives the origin to the title of Vivir es fácil con los ojos cerrados. The problem is I'm a bit old and my children still have their eyes closed now. I opened them up with democracy, and I'm not too sure whether my grandchildren are the same. Javier Cámara I compared him, yes, because I love him as an actor, to Marcello Mastroianni. And my friend said, yeah, but not as attractive. Don't worry, because that's right, yeah. Talk me up and then give me a slap on the face. It always happens to me. Thank you. Wasn't a question, was it? Oh, it was a question. The Marcello Mastroianni of comedy. That was the question. Well, for me, the examples in which we were thinking about in this film, we wanted this character to be to have hard-headed and also to be very sympathetic towards the audience. Alfredo Landa died when we were doing this, shooting the film, and we saw the 850, which is the car. We're going to call it Alfredo the car because Alfredo Landa had died. At the end of the day, that car was the metaphor of an impossible journey, but with a special personality. And we needed it to last for the entire film, and we made a tribute to those great actors. I've borne them in mind, him as well as López Vázquez, I bore them in mind. And I was thinking of those actors that moved, that were exaggerating, they exaggerated the gestures, and very timid and shy to demonstrate their emotions. The character talks a lot, as you can see, but it's almost difficult to talk about his emotions, and that's what we wanted to pay tribute to those actors. Marcello Mastroianni, thank you very much for that praise, but he enters into one of those actors. At least I admire him very much as well. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for being here. It's a pleasure for us to be here in San Sebastian, and well, for me, Italian actors in general, I think, are the greatest school, acting school that's ever existed. The generation of Gassman, Marcello Mastroianni, Alberto Sordi, or Ugo Tognazzi are irreparable. And I believe anything close to them, I think it's of great praise. As regards to the closed eyes that you're referring to, I'm not too sure whether youngsters nowadays or kids have their eyes closed, but I think that close their eyes. Well, a lot of things close their eyes, and some people close their eyes when they're trying to open them up. But everyone's got to find your own place for your own to express yourself, no matter how difficult the social or life conditions are. Every person has to confront a challenge which is larger than that, which is the challenge of making one's own life something that one can feel proud of, at least intimately and in his or her surroundings. So therefore, I'm sure that everyone, no matter how depressing the newspaper or the TV or the news, the news that you receive, someone outside is going to make us feel very glad to be alive and do things that it's almost impossible that a human being can do, albeit let's hope they've got the possibility, that culture broth, in order to allow them to do so. Hi, good morning. I'm at the back here. Thanks for this delicious film that, looking into the past, we see each other now. Could you reflect upon the way you look into the past? What do you see in the past? Why do you use it as a scenario or a stage to reflect upon life. And then there's another beautiful thing that you do in your films, and that is generations end up making peace with each other. So therefore, that's the way you link life with people from different generations that don't hate each other, but they complement each other at the end of the day. Well, yes, I think that life offers you conditions to reconciliate yourself with what you were fighting against, especially with your own parents and your own family, it was as if when you're young and an adolescent, you're almost in jail, and ends up being a sort of a reflection of yourself when you become a parent and you set up a family. So therefore, the only models you've got at the end of the day are those that you've had close to you. And I believe, yes, I believe at the end of the day, I think we're all able to find ourselves in other people. I think the worst thing that we have in the way we live is to classify people before meeting them and to confront each other without giving us the opportunity of getting to know each other and to see how similar we are, no matter, even if we're antagonists. At the end of the day, we're made up from the same substances. And in that sense, I believe that it's not so much the film, but I myself who is made of that. But I do believe that it's also important to be rebellious and to confront confront your complexes and to confront authority. And I think that if something inspires me of the visit like John Lennon, for example, to a country like Spain in 1966, is that he represented the working class from Liverpool. He had taken a leap in his life, something impossible in previous years, especially in a classist type country such as England. He turned things around, and he was a person who had a discourse which was anti-repression, anti-authoritarian, and so therefore it was a presence in Spain, but just by being in Spain, it wasn't necessary for him to say anything. Just what he radiated was already generated in itself a kind of revolution and an incentive, and I'm sure that many young people in Spain, and I'm not too sure whether it was like the sun shining on them, illuminating them, he was a presence that inspired them. And I don't know, I think at the end of the day, every different era requires people that enlighten other people, that enlighten the darkness. Every period in time has horrible moments, and we need people that are exemplary like that. And I think he was, and in Spain, it was like a time bomb, just like tourism in general, the arrival of people who came along without any prejudices and no preconceived ideas to this country at that time. Hi, David. Good morning. What I wanted to ask you, there's an action that the parents are also very close to your family. How, as you said before, it's why if you look for models that are very close to your life, or because you wanted to pay this tribute to things that have happened very close to you. Well, everything that I've written, there are always elements that are drawn from real life and friends of mine and my family and people who I know and things that I've heard. And obviously in this film, in one of the seeds, when it starts up, it's a family story in my house. One of my brothers had left home just when I was born because my father wanted him to cut everybody's hair. So as if you cut it really short, as if you had to go to military service the next day. So and therefore, and my brother wanted to have long hair, at least aesthetically speaking, so therefore he left home. And my mother always told me something which turned me into the narrator or the storyteller. I like those kinds of stories. So I said every time she was giving me when I was suckling at her breast, for example, I was always crying to see where my brother was. When she stopped, she cleaned my face, and I was totally sweating, because she was crying so much, and that was like my baptism. And the other thing is just something that they did because it was compulsory at that time, but I think that was my true baptism. A mother crying and thinking, where's my son? Where's he gone? And the truth is, he was in a bar right next to the sea with a man who was saying, why is this guy left home? Because he's a really nice kid. And for Javier, I would like to ask you didn't you tell David, please, let me do something evil which take me to the dark side. Well, the truth is he eats human flesh, but we left that out of the screen. The first scene, when that stew, we don't explain it, but we had to cut that part out. We had to edit it out. Well, the producer said, well, this is too much. Well, they want people to cry more at the end and not at the beginning. So we edited it out. No. Well, you always look about who's telling the story, and who's telling the story here is the director. I recognize that I like to listen and to directors and to turn myself into an instrument, and especially make the work easy, because I know that a director has got a lot of things to do. And when he told me that there was an anecdote from a real character, and part of the story was part of his family, so therefore I started to observe him. And okay, well, there are certain things that you don't copy, but you start to. I'd never worked with him, and nor with Christina and with his family, which is the rest of the crew, and we started to observe them and create the character from there. I don't know what's come out. I'm very happy. I get very moved when I see the film. The first time I saw it, I got very moved. It moved me very much. I thought, what a beautiful film we've made. And I'm not too sure whether there's a lot of David in my character, but I'm sure there's a little bit of him in my character. Good morning. 2 questions for the director. When you have an idea or you've got a plot in your head, when and how do you decide it can turn into a novel or a script for a film? And secondly, your latest film, Saber Perder, Knowing How to Lose, it talks about Spanish society, the unemployment, and it talks about Spanish society, as I was saying. Will that be turned into a film or directed by somebody else or yourself? No, thank you very much. It's quite curious. Know How to Lose, Saber Perder, it's a novel I wrote thinking or perceiving that the scaffolding in this society of success where everything goes very well was not as solid, that scaffolding or those foundations. And that in this moment of economic crisis, I don't have the need to tell that story, because to a certain extent, in 2004, when I started to write that book and Spain was going well, it's not that I was a prophet, that we noticed, if you were really interested in the backbone of society, you know that it was on very fragile foundations, that whenever there was a landslide, everything was going to fall to pieces, and many ideas and a lot of values that were highly considered at that time. What happens is, when I finish a novel, is that I don't feel like extending its life. That's the job's finished and the novel was finished. And when they ask me to direct it or adapt it to cinema, it's as if they propose me to painting the picture again. I say, now you've done it, and now do it in water paintings, and because you've done an oil painting. No, I feel like going on to something new. And as regards to the birth and the genre, the seed of this in my script, I don't have any conflict. Each idea is associated to the way it's going to be told. The story's going to be told. They say a story doesn't, an anecdote doesn't emerge, and you say this could be a novel or this could be a film. Then I'm sure it could, but in my case, it's associated already to what it's going to be. So therefore, I've got an idea, for example, for a novel or for a film. No, I don't have an idea. So that is, at the end of the day, these are elements that imagine or come together already linked together. They say I couldn't separate one from the other. So therefore I remember the first time I read about this teacher going to meet John Lennon, I said, what a great novel there is. I don't know why. Well, perhaps it could have been. I thought that could be a great film. And then I saw Almeria. I said, well, of course, look at the landscape. I remember an interview with Lennon at that time and in Almeria, and he said, the first time they asked him, I said, what are you doing here? And he said, I don't know, this landscape's like being on the moon. And he says, it's really strange. It gives you a feeling of being in an African country, which at the end of the day, he wasn't too mistaken, was he? Because we have got an African component, which is quite important, and even more so at that time. But like I say, that's how it stems. Well, I remember when we finished Jorge's series, Jorge, there were proposals of doing the second season and doing many more episodes and so on and so forth. I said, well, the interesting thing now is to do something else for Jorge, for me, and so therefore I convinced everybody that it was better. Instead of a second season, to do a chapter, to do one program every 5 years, and to see what happens to Jorge, even physically, which is the most beautiful, to see someone who we've seen who was 8 years old, and then who's 13, and then he's 16, and then when you went to high school, all the girls were in love with him. So therefore, to turn that around, and that's it. Now you're going to pay your dues. So, hi, good morning. The Spanish cinema, congratulations, Conchita. I'm the only person in Spain that haven't congratulated for the award that the Cinema Academy gave you, please. Thank you very much. Congratulations. A few years back, they threw out a journalist a few years back who was normally came here in the press conferences, and I remember I thought, at the end of the day, there are people that are like part of your family. You can't do a press conference and Conchita Casanova not being here. So therefore, I'm very happy that you received that award, and congratulations. That's good for us to be able to congratulate you. Thank you very much, David. I would like to ask you, Spanish cinema seems that is more useful. Cannibal, for example, can drop the level of cholesterol in the country, and you can improve the English level in the country. And learn a few English lessons are always a good idea. I don't know whether you went to... Did you use the Beatles lyrics more than practicing to reinforce your English? Javier Cámara, could you tell us how... where any artist or music has been useful for you to improve your English? I'm with French now. I'm learning French. With who? Who are you? What I mean is without music. No, I practice this in private, obviously. That's it, Cristina. Okay, we've caused havoc. No, Javier, I said, with any musician. No, not with a male musician. No, not at all. Well, a French is learned with Jack Bell and Barbara Bach, who says she pronounces French very well. There is absurd games we can play with these words. No, I tried to speak a bit of English. In fact, I went to the US to improve my English, and I recognize that France is much closer. And so it's much similar to Spanish, and it's much closer associated to what happens to me internally. But I think it's fantastic that this person who really exists in the 1960s tried to copy the lyrics through Radio Luxembourg of the Beatles, very excited and really hard-headed and a hard-headed idealist to teach little children so they could feel proud in the schoolyard teaching the lyrics to their elders. It's not only to learn English, but to give them wings for them to be important and to feel important. So therefore, I was fascinated by this man when we met the character. I said, David, he said he wrote the story before taking this anecdote to not feel highly influenced by the real story. But it was very useful to get to know this person. He's got his beautiful light eyes, very tough grey hair, and I think he's 80-something, and he's got a very strong handshake. So therefore, Professor Juan Carrion, the level of English that he manages to achieve in his academy from his students, because I went to visit him, and there were kids there who were 12 or 13, and Spain is a country that in general has enormous difficulty to speak languages and even to respect the languages from their own country if it continues while it's still its country. And I've never understood the difficulties, national difficulties, with languages. I think we should be studied. There should be doctors' theses. Basque is difficult, okay? Okay, Basque is difficult. And that's the best test. When people have wanted to learn it and to speak it and they've had the means to do it, it's transformed the amount of people who speak English. That's the best example. For example, when both parties, the government and the citizens and the parents, for example, for the kids to learn, we learn a language which is as complex as Basque. So therefore, imagine what Spain could do with English and so on and so forth, and not having to to get internationally ashamed of when somebody has to speak in public. And for example, oh my God, why don't they speak English? So therefore this teacher, this English teacher, I asked his kids, his students, and I was surprised at the level of how they spoke in Cartagena. And many of them were grandchildren of students of his, sons and daughters of ex-students of his. He's a man that he's decided to teach English, and he's done this. And he's like, if we all to do everything at that same level, I think we could be much prouder of many of the things in this country than what we are. So therefore, I think that each of us, we should start with our own academy sort of thing. What do we do to get ourselves to this? Well, let's go. I don't care what the general level is. I don't care what everybody else thinks, but let's try to do things and honestly do our things, the things we do with honesty as well. And that's one of the best things I could highlight. David, the music, because you make a film about a figure like John Lennon, but I'm not too sure because of copyright issues, you don't use Beatles songs, but how did you deal with well, the Beatles music, obviously, I don't have to explain, to achieve it, to get it, and to, you've got to get a medal, and I'll be very thankful to my production, Cristina Weltel, my producer, for months and months and months to achieve. The kids in the class can recite Help, and to hear the song that Lennon composed in Almeria, Strawberry Fields. These are fights that are not at the reach of a film. At the end of the day, it's very tough, and even less so for a Spanish film. So it's very difficult, even for a great American film, to achieve the rights for that. I didn't want the film full of Beatles music because it seemed to me that the film isn't a film about the Beatles. It's a film that has another territory where it develops. And in fact, when I finished shooting it, there was a great question in my mind of what to do with the soundtrack and which way to go. I had Spanish friends who were musicians. Who's going to do it? I never resolved that. And all of a sudden, I remembered a record that I liked very much, which is called Beyond Missouri's Skies, Pat Metheny and Jack Hayden, for example. It's like I liked it. It's a type of cinematographic Western sort of. It's a record that made you see exactly that, those skies. And all of a sudden I realized that Almeria had Missouri skies because they had simulated being Missouri skies for 2 decades when they were shooting westerns there. So I'm not going to call Pat Metheny, he's a star and he's probably on an international tour and he can't play on the soundtrack. Perhaps Charlie Hayden is much more easier. And Charlie Hayden took Pat Metheny, they both saw the film, they got on the ship, not based upon knowing me or thinking that I was a person who was valuable. And so they're very intelligent there, but they liked the film and they wanted to get linked to the film. I must recognize that all of the doors were opened by the film, and including the Beatle element, because finally to achieve Help, we had to take 2 versions of the class. One version was with the song, another version was if they didn't allow us use the song. So therefore, we edited the second version and we sent it so that they could see it because they wanted to see it. When they said it, oh yeah, that's good, we like this very much. So I don't know who it is or what level of inheritance they have. Nobody asks whether who sees it or whatever, or a lawyer or a record label, but we managed to achieve the soundtrack that way. I don't know. I know that there are films that, for example, that have a guardian angel and things happen which are unexpected and other things, and that it all becomes a real ordeal. And so therefore, in this, I must recognize that the doors were open to us when you called, knocked on the door, and they said, they're going to slam the door in our face. Javier Cámara, I said, he'll probably say no. Many years ago, I'd already proposed a role to Javier Cámara. He said very politely, no. And he said, I said, I'm never going to work with the Trueba. It's going to open a big door, and it's going to be ruined. The actors say when you say no, I said, don't worry. All of the women in my life have said no, and if you wait and persevere, one day you catch them at a weak moment. So the same thing with the actor. There's a moment where you catch them when you walk in. I don't know. You get lucky. Love is blind. I think actors also are a bit blind with their directors at times. Congratulations for the film. Good morning. The first thing I felt, and I imagine, is happiness at the end of the film. And inevitably, I think of the American feel-good movies, and I don't know whether that approach is is what you think when you started to write the film or your director. No, generally I'm a happy person and extroverted, and I enjoy life very much. And in general, people always accuse me that my films have a certain, sort of have a bit of melancholy. For example, life is a place where you're having a good time, and then all of a sudden they say, hey, by the way, what the doctor saw, and you've got 2 weeks to live. I said, well, why not be melancholic? I said, if you grow up thinking about everything you're going to lose, but I think that melancholy, for example, should be used by us to take full advantage of the time we have and the life we have and the people that we know. And in that sense, that's the way I am. But I've never addressed the feel-good issue like a genre in cinema. No, not at all. I think that in general, the good thing, the one thing is they should have brushstrokes of many different colors, and sometimes I tend to use one palette of colors and another case another palette of colors, but in general I've always moved in the same territory, and if something's quite clear in anything that I've written down is I think that the people at the end of everything, end of the day, I believe in people, and that's the only thing I believe in. I don't believe in anything else. I don't even believe in monuments, nor in flags, nor in histories, nor in era, and it was better. It was demonstrated by Woody Allen in that film. Everyone wants to live in a different era than to one's own, and the Impressionists preferred to have lived a century before. And I think that nobody's satisfied in the period of time that you have to live in. But at the end, way back, that's the time that you have to live in. There's no way you can get away from this. So, but like I was saying, for me, good feelings of people doesn't enter into my plans. I tell a story, and what that story transmits depends upon the audience. Some people see more sadness, some people see more joy, according to their own life experience at that moment. Hi, good morning, David. I would like to ask you, how do you manage from something so small turn into something so big and large? How do you manage to turn Javier into a hero, being an English teacher, and the only thing that he wants is to teach English to his students, and that's why he wants to go and meet John Lennon? And then I would like you to talk about the places, the location. Almeria, what's quite present is Albacete and Logroño, because of the number plate on the car. I'll start by the end. And excuse me for saying this, and forgive me for saying this, over time I'm turning into a person who is more and more involved in my own country, in the historical and life circumstance of my country. One of the best things that I like are different accents, different regions, different particularities of my country, and all of this should be present in my films, which are full of Catalonians, Andalusians, people from La Rioja, Basque people. So therefore, I think that's the way it should be, because they're all in life and they form part of life. And when they said, what number plate should we put on the car? Did he say out 850? I said immediately, Logroño. From Logroño, I said, Logroño, why Logroño? I said, for 2 basic reasons. Javier Cámaras from Logroño. And the second is, even basic, that Rafael Azcona is from Logroño. And I said, well, Logroño is of fundamental importance, and for me too. And so there's a moment when Javier said, this car belongs to my father. Well, where's Javier's father from? Logroño. And something quite curious happened with Natalia as well, because when I saw the first audition she did without an Andalusian accent. She's been living in Madrid for quite a while, and one of her enormous efforts, apart from studying, acting and so on, is to get rid of her accent, because to work, it's like before in the news on TV, everyone was from the Canary Islands, but nobody had an accent. But all of a sudden, she did the audition without an accent. And I said, the role was for an Andalusian girl. I said, something that she didn't know. And I said, what a pity, this girl, if she was Andalusian, she'd be perfect for the role. And so therefore, one of those things, I said to the casting girl, where's she from? She said, no, she's from Madrid. I said, what a pity. Well, let's leave her let's leave her aside if we can't find anyone for the role. And I called her up. I said, where are you from? I said, no, I'm from Jaén, but I was brought up between Granada, Almeria, and Malaga, more or less. And so she told me, I said, yeah, what is that girl you talked about? She's not from Madrid. She's Andalusian. I said, what? And so I called her up. I said, could you do the audition in an Andalusian accent? And of course, this changes things quite a lot. I said, well, okay. And that's precisely the change. So if she came in an Andalusian, and then Francesc came in from Manlleu with his, I said, no, I said, Francesc. I'd seen him in an interview in a channel in Catalonia a couple of years after Pa Negra, the film. And then I thought, well, hey, gee, this guy grows up really well. It's very difficult to grow up well, that is to say. To be a 12-year-old child with those big eyes and that look that he had, that's easy. But to do the same thing when you're 16, when everything's coming out and blooming, is much more complicated. So therefore, I called him up and it was great to have them all there, with all of them with their own number plate, as should be the case. I don't think we should give in to number plates. We are from our mother and father. We come from our mother and father. It was great if our mother was Brigitte Bardot and our father George Clooney. Others of us have had much more luck, I believe. Teruel as well. Teruel also exists. Yes, well, Aragon in my life has been very important, because I've had a life that's between Madrid and Catalonia, and therefore I realized that the truth is that I should have been from Zaragoza, which is in the middle. But no one had ever told me. And that's why he's so hard-headed. I congratulate you for this film, which is very moving and a perfect film. I would like to know the perception that you had during the shooting of the film, the rest of the people in the cast. Jorge, Francesca, Natalia, could you tell us about your experience during the shooting of the film? I'll start because I'm older. I'm the eldest. Well, for me, this shooting, it meant a lot of things. That when you, first of all, I had to discover Javier Cámara, who's a person who's more at the height of his performance. I've discovered he's one of the two best actors in this country. And he's an even better person. That's what I've discovered. And I've also discovered new professions. As I've worked as a driver, as a mechanic as well. What I didn't know was that the car was called Alfredo Landa. So therefore, I've worked in the mechanics on Alfredo Landa. The car was breaking down, and we were shooting. The car didn't work very well. Jorge turned up, who was visiting that day. I think that's a relay there. It's a connection, and in a minute, Jorge fixed the car up. Well, almost everything. And then to work with the two young, it was like a breath of fresh air working with these. It's the first time that I work as a father of a numerous family. And I've taken a lot of steps forward in this film. And to work with Cristina and with David, it's always a blessing. And very little more. For me, it's the same thing, because especially I had a really good time with everyone. It was like a big family set up, and Javier, and I had a great time. It was perfect. But the slap in the face was real. Yeah, I did get a slap in the face. The problem is, when I slapped him, he started to laugh in that scene, so therefore it wasn't real, because I didn't expect it. That's why I laughed. I slapped a small slap, but you did well. But you did it well. It didn't hurt that much. I don't like receiving, not having to slap people or receive a slap. It's very uncomfortable. You've got to repeat it 20 times. And slap a person 20 times for the poor kid, well, it didn't feel good to me. So quite fortunately, he laughed after the slap. So therefore, it was sufficient with just once. Well, this experience for me was very beautiful. It's been a great experience, and I've discovered many things, because it's also the first time that I played a role in a feature film and a project. So there were many things that I didn't have under control, and I was a bit afraid. But on the other hand, I was so excited, and I felt like so much of playing the role of Belen, and to work with the whole crew, that I let myself go, and I don't know. Well, I hope that you like it. Because I had a great time, and it was lovely. I don't know what else to say. I'm a bit nervous. Okay, well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Gracias.